when you look at what is yoga today, it has become very, very narrowed into what the Yoga Sutra will refer to as the Bahiranga Yoga, which is asana and pranayama mostly. The other very interesting thing about Vikramaditya that most people don't know is that they're actually two. They're twins, and one person would stay in the Aranya. He would be meditating and reflecting for 6 months, come and take over the throne, while the person who's ruling will go there.
Individual and Vyakti are two different. They have a different meaning. Individual is that which is last unit, indivisible, whereas Vyakti is expressed. Now, we use both the words for the human being, individual or Vyakti, but we are talking very different things. The Vasana as such is the reason for existence, core Vasana, but role of sadhana is to refine the Vasanas so that so that we have more sattvic vasanas, because sattvic vasanas will help us to balance the inertia and the dynamism in life.
Namaste and welcome to another discussion on Sangam Talks, where we are going to discuss a very interesting subject, the Chitta. As a layman, as far as I understand, there is a mind and there is a heart. That's what I have heard all the way. But is it a Western classification? What is the Indian psychology? What is Chitta about? What is Chitta Vidya? How can it be beneficial to us, especially in times where we seem to be getting into a deluge of mental health issues around us, while we are supposed to be pursuing pleasure? We have two eminent guests to speak on this subject. In the studio, we have Professor Ashish Pandey ji.
Namaste.
He teaches at Sailesh J. Mehta School of Management in IIT Bombay. He has conducted research on the applications of Indian wisdom traditions to management, leadership, and organizational development, and has published multiple papers and books on this topic. He has developed and taught courses on Indian management philosophy, ethics, and spirituality for MBA and PhD students. Joining us online is Sri Raghu Anantnarayanan ji. To give you a slight background, Sri Raghu ji is a direct disciple of Yogacharya Krishnamacharya and his son Sri T.K.V. Deshikacharya, and has spent more than a decade in deep study of the Yoga Shastras with them. He has also benefited from a long association with J. Krishnamurti and Professor Pulin K. Garg of IIM Ahmedabad. Raghuji has also delved deeply into yoga and behavioral sciences and developed a unique approach to personal unfolding and organizational transformation called Chitta Vidya. So, as a layman in these matters, I am very excited to get myself enriched during this riveting and enriching conversation. So, let us start. Sir, welcome once again. Sir, my question to you is, how will you explain the importance of Indian psychology to a layman, specifically with reference to the contrast between Western psychology and Indian psychology?
What is the importance of the Indian psychology? We need to understand it. What is the importance of Indian wisdom to understand human mind? So, all the cultures in the world have tried to understand human mind in their own ways. They have developed their heuristics, they have developed their techniques, methods, practices. In the modern time, which is informed by the you can say the Enlightenment era, the positivism, scientific temper, all those have also contributed to the development of the field of psychology. When this era dawned upon the humanity and they looked at the human mind, naturally they wanted to have a validated principles, they want to have some measurements, they also looked at things free from various belief system. They just wanted to understand mind in its own term. If we look at Indian psychology, Indian psychology also has tried to understand mind in its own terms. Without the help of Ishvara, without the help of avatar, there are Indian tradition which believes in that, but when it came to understand human mind, it was understood in its own term. So, that is the first characteristic of Indian psychology. Where do we see that? We see that in the Yoga Sutra in a very concise way, because the very purpose of the Yoga Sutra is to, very purpose of the yoga as explained in the Yoga Sutra is to control the mind stuff, Chitta Vidya and Nirodha, or the management of that. Important thing is, in order to understand mind, we need to understand what is our concept of the human being. If human being is understood as a biological, social, materialistic, utility optimizing human being, we develop a certain type of understanding of mind. But if we consider human being as divine, which is expression of the eternal constant consciousness, we understand we look at the mind, we can understand mind from a different perspective. That is the second point which I would like to highlight about the Indian psychology. The basic tenet about the human being is expressed in the uh, in the in the way Rishi addresses his disciples. Amrita Sunvantu Amritasya Putra. O son of divinity, now listen. So, this is the second part of the second aspect of the Indian psychology. The third part is that it aims at not only living and coping with the world, it aims at developing highest possibility of the human life. So, we may not have lot of practices or knowledge, we may not have lot of codified knowledge on how to handle some of the trivialities of the mind, but we have a very significant body of knowledge in terms of the concept, practices, schema, heuristic to realize the highest potential of human being in terms of creativity, in terms of self control, in terms of possibilities, understanding subject, understanding the world, enhancement of the perception, highest possibility of capturing the interoception, best control in the mind, how to bring the mind in the total control, how to make the mind as a, and it's to put that at the rightful place, that is slave. So, that is the so mind is a slave of human being. Mind is the human being is much more than the mind. So, this is the third aspect of Indian psychology. So, if I put it very concisely, uh, Indian psychology understands mind in its own term like the modern psychology, but its assumption about human being is that it is expression of the divinity. So, the practices, methods, techniques developed by the rishis of the Indian psychology are there to attain the highest potentials of the creativity, intelligence, perception and interoception, and this all is with the larger purpose of Lokasangraha, how to contribute to the world in the best possible way. So, these are the basic tenets to start with about the Indian psychology.
So, one of the questions that is coming to my mind is that often young people these days talk about 16 types of personality classifications. They have various acronyms or something like INFT or whatever. And they tend to, especially the youngsters, the teenagers, the growing ones, they tend to sort of analyze it using internet or whatever, and they try to somehow put themselves in some sort of category that I am this kind of a person, I am that kind of a person. So, what I want to ask you is, what are the Indian psychological archetypes and why are they important?
In order to understand the Indian archetype, three very basic things we need to refer. Number one, what you have referred as MBTI typology or MBTI types, they are related to one aspect of the human personality, that is mostly in our Indian system called Manomaya Kosh, level of mind. It is not even, it to some extent captures the Vijnanamaya Kosh, but it is mostly about the Manomaya Kosh. From there we need to understand what is the Indian, in order to understand the Indian typology, we need to understand the concept of the human being in the Indian psychology is integrative. Mano, Annamaya Kosh, which is physical being, Pranamaya Kosh, which is sheath of vitality, Manomaya Kosh, which is realm of emotions, Vijnanamaya Kosh is internalized wisdom. It is not only intellect, not external intellect. Actually, external intellect based on the memory, some logic is as much a Manomaya Kosh. Vijnanamaya Kosh is when that knowledge or the wisdom is internalized, when all four are aligned, we experience Anandamaya Kosh. Anandamaya Kosh is already there, is always there. That is the very nature of human being. That is what I shared, that human being is divine. That is the basic tenet of the Indian culture. And Vijnanamaya, beyond the Vijnanamaya Kosh, Anandamaya Kosh is its natural state. So, that is the first thing about the Indian typology. Then there are two other things, gun and dosh. Gunas are sattvic, rajasic and tamasic. Rajasic is a dynamic principle, tamasic is inertness principle, that which balances, the right balance in the right state of life between dynamism and stability, that knowledge, that enlightenment come with the sattva gun. So, that is how the sattvic, rajasic and tamasic, these are the Indian archetype. Another very useful Indian archetype comes from Ayurveda, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Vata is a dynamic principle, it is movement principle. Pitta is the fiery or the enlightenment principle. Kapha is stability principle. This is very simplistic way I am explaining, and but in so different people have different types of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Not only these three types, there are actually 7 types, which is the combination of dual and the 3. The beauty of this typology is that it not only captures the Manomaya Kosh, like most of the psychological archetype which we see in the contemporary literature. The Vata, Pitta, Kapha or Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic, they capture physical, emotional and intellectual aspect in totality. That is why they are able to give suggestions not only about how to manage the mind, they also are very well equipped, and in fact there is a huge body, lot of text available to look at the intervention at the level of food, at the level of how to breathe, how to maintain our emotions, how to think about the world and life about these questions. So, it gives holistic intervention because it is based on a holistic view of human being, and these are the 3 typology, these are the primary 2 typology based on the Panchakosha, and at the metaphysical level it is based on the 5 tattvas, what we call Akash, Vayu, Jal, Agni, Prithvi. Composition of the Vata, Pitta, Kapha is the different proportion of these 5 tattvas in the personality. So, we have a very sophisticated system of the personality archetype, which has very strong metaphysics. And when we were talking about the Sangam talk and we were thinking about having this podcast, so I was asked why Indian psychology should be considered seriously. So, my submission is that across the modern streams, I am saying modern streams like chemistry, physics, biology,
Okay.
sociology, psychology. Because the ancient Vidya sthan are different, the 14 or 18 Vidya sthan, Ved, Vedang, Upaved, etc. Those are different. But if we look at the modern classification of the academic literature, it is, in my understanding, it is only Indian psychology which has very well laid out metaphysics, ontology, meaning your basic assumption about the nature of things, epistemology, which is basic ways of understanding things, basic ways of learning about and knowing about things, and axiology. So, that is why Indian psychology must be understood, because it is, in my understanding, it is one of the most mature academically scholarly system which has metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, axiology practices well laid out. So, we need to give attention to that.
Thank you so much, sir. Let me bring in Raghuji here. Sir, welcome once again. And since you have been working on the Center for Chitta Vidya, so as a layman, again, how do you explain Chitta Vidya to a layman, and how do you explain Chitta? Please enlighten us on that, sir.
Thank you, Ashish. That was a very interesting overview and where to place Indian psychology. While Ashish ji has given a very interesting empirical and academic overview, plus his own practice and his own experimentation, let me talk about a very specific focus that I've been working with over the last almost 4 5 decades. See, there is a lot of confusion between the word chitta and the word chit, and these two have to be understood clearly. Yeah, like Ashiji was saying, for us in the Indian context, chit, which is consciousness or Atman, is the basis. And chitta is a manifestation of Prakriti, and the chitta is fundamentally not conscious. It's a reflector, and it's very clearly described in the texts. All its functions are all described, and it's loosely translated as the mind. But again, I will refer back to what Ashishji said, that every kosha is a reflection of the chitta, and the chitta is what digests whatever inputs come from the outside and converts it constantly into our life force, into our emotions, into our thoughts, our insights, and the ananda. So it's a very central thing, and it cannot be broken up into mind and body and so on. This is very important to understand. Now, the other source of confusion is that when you look at what is yoga today, it has become very, very narrowed into what the Yoga Sutra will refer to as the Bahiranga Yoga, which is asana and pranayama mostly. These are demonstrable. So I can do an asana and show you. I can do pranayama and you can understand more or less what it is, so, though there are many internal aspects of pranayama. And some aspects of yama, the external, can also be demonstrated and so on. So that actually modern yoga doesn't even consider yama as an important thing, which is a very strange state of affairs. But these are all the external, Bahiranga yoga. The Yoga Sutra itself talks about something called Antaranga yoga. This is all the internal capabilities, and it includes what Ashishji was talking about as interoception and much more than that, because you need a certain deep internal understanding to know what is happening inside me and how to relate it to the outside. Yeah. So that whole process of the antakaranas, which is the manas Ahankara and Buddhi, how they work together, how they work in concert with all the koshas. That understanding is understanding the chitta. Why is it important? Because some of the critical things that we are talking about, like chitta vritti nirodha, unless you really understand the chitta, you cannot work with yourself in a way that you come to this state of silence, and the mind which is disturbed and distracted, which is called the vyuktita chitta, has to go through what's called a samahita chitta, which is a balanced state of mind, and then on to states like nirodha, ekagrata, and even further. So this whole process between how to enable a mind which is in Vyuktita Chitta all the way to Ekagrita Chitta is called Antaranga Yoga. And Chitta Vidya is fundamentally focusing here. This Chitta is then capable of many, many extraordinary capabilities, which is not available to a Vyuktita Chitta. These extraordinary capabilities are only available to a mind that is capable of ekagrata. Those are called Parama Antaranga Yoga. I don't know what the English term may be. Ashish can help us, maybe transcendental or maybe transpersonal or parapsychology. I don't know where it will fall. But it's all one whole process of the mind, of the chitta that is dealt with in the Yoga Sutra. Now, what I have done is there is a seamless connection between all the arts like Natya Shastra, Itihasa Purana, and the entire exploration of the psyche in all of them, and Chitta Vidya, which my guru Krishnamacharya would often refer to. So, while designing an experiential way of understanding the self, I've brought all this together.
Sir, I'm interrupting you a bit. Usually, these days, normally, people do talk about being ekagrachit. Like students are often told, be ekagrachit. Then people are also told, don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future. Be, what is called here and now. As you explain, the question that emerged in my mind is, are they, will a person be able to be even ekagrachit if he does not understand, or he is not trained in that, in this seamless understanding of the chit?
Not possible because the nature of a chitta is outward oriented. This is talked about in Kathopanishad. It's also talked about in the Yoga Sutras and all that. In fact, Krishnamacharya would say that chitta vritti is the movement of the chitta which is fundamentally triggered by anxieties and tensions between me and my world. Now, unless I understand the source of it, which in the second chapter is very clearly talked about, the first object of your dhyana is your chitta. And when you do that, the source of all of these disturbances, your conditioning, deep imprints, which is the samskaras and vasanas, get dissolved and burnt off. Only then is the mind capable of becoming balanced and anchored in Shanta. See, one of the strange things you'll find when you go to yoga classes, the asana pranayama classes, they'll say, make your mind silent. You can't make your mind silent. Who's making what silent? However, the Yoga Sutra is very clear. When you have an ability to anchor yourself deeply, automatically the mind becomes silent. So it's a consequence. So, Ekagrata Chitta and all of these are a consequence of a deep understanding of the psyche, cleansing it of the avidya, the samskaras, and so on. And then it happens naturally that you're able to bring all your faculties and everything to pay sustained attention on something. Then, obviously, I mean, a scientist is somebody who brings all of this into understanding objects, which is talked about in the Yoga Sutras. A good Vaidya will bring that focus to the body and health and so on. So all of this is covered in the Yoga Sutra.
Sir, that takes me to the next question. You have been working in the field of Chitta Vidya for a long time. So, how has it evolved over time? What has been your experiences? If you can let us know, that would be of great help to the viewers.
See, how it started is very interesting. I was studying with Deshikacharya and Krishnamacharya, his father, for a couple of years when through a lot of mutual friends and some accidents, I met up with this person called Professor Pulin Garg. He is one of the pioneers of encounter groups and what's called process work in India. And he brought in a very, very Indic orientation to the whole thing. Right? He brought in what's called an Upanishadic dialogue mode, and he focused on how identity is formed, whereas the Western focus is only a transactional and an outward thing. When I met him and shared with him some of the work I was doing, especially the Yoga Sutras, he was very, very interested. He came over to Chennai, stayed with us, my home, for 6 weeks or so, and we interacted with my teacher Deshikachar almost every other day for an hour and a half or 2 hours. So in that context, they picked out 70 to 80 sutras which were convergent, which had a lot of coherence between some aspects of psychology, introspective work, and Yoga Sutras. So I've been working on that since then and developing it further and further using both, using self-reflective work, identity group work, which helps you to introspect. And both Pulin Garg and I think that the original Gurukula methods included these kind of very deep dialogues. There's a fair amount of documentation on this because without deep introspective work, you can't understand the psyche. That's why it's called Antaranga yoga and not a Bahiranga yoga. I can't show you my chitta. I have to understand what you say, apply it, have a dialogue with you, tell you what's happening inside me, and so on.
Sir, kindly also tell us something about the sacred activists that you have been working with.
No, that's an interesting thing. Uh, See, one of the things that's happened in India is, except the few groups, most work in the NGO sector is captured by certain kinds of ideologies and whatever. So, this was a group of people who were caught in that and were very unhappy. So, they came to me, about 15, 20 of them, and said, how do we apply the Yoga Sutra to working with grassroots change? And I've done a fair amount of work in that, worked with large systems and whatever apart. See, my work with leadership includes NGOs and developmental sector and the craft sector. So we worked with them and I taught them a lot of these methods. And they were very happy to experiment with me. So many of the ideas that I had, like working with the Mahabharata as a fundamental way of making shifts. You asked about archetypes. Huh?
Mhm.
Mahabharata heroes are role archetypes. And it's a very fundamental text because it tells you that leadership is not just a Rambo or a Bhima type, brave chap going and attacking and things like that. That's a colonial idea of leadership. Here it clearly talks about how these five have to come together and the criticality of understanding Dharma Sankata, which is the old Indian tradition. See, Vikramaditya is really the model of leadership for us. And you must have read all the stories, no? Of Vikramaditya and the Vetal and all of that.
Yes, sir. It used to be a very famous TV series during our childhood, Vikram or Vetal.
Correct. And all the stories are about double binds. Your whole world is full of paradoxes, double binds, polarities. Understanding that is critical to life and to leadership. Yeah. The other very interesting thing about Vikramaditya that most people don't know is that they're actually two. They're twins, and one person would stay in the Aranya. He would be meditating and reflecting for 6 months, come and take over the throne, while the person who's ruling will go there. That's the original model of deep introspective work which informs the outer. And that's the Arjuna's thing in Mahabharata also. How do you go inward first, discover sannyasa yoga before you act outside?
In fact, sir, Arjuna almost comes across as somebody who is quite confused. But I think the way you have put it, unless you get a bit confused, you really cannot come to a more sustainable conclusion.
I wouldn't call it confusion. I don't know why people call it. He articulates his dilemma and his Dharma
Right.
Sankata very, very clearly, very precisely. All the factors that are pulling him and pushing him. Na? So I wouldn't call it
Yes.
confusion. There is depression and all that, which will happen when you have to confront the world and your fundamental ideas have to be completely shaken up. You will go through that kind of a stress. But where is the confusion? His articulation is so precise, exactly what's happening to his body. His interoception is precise. His motivational confusion is very precise.
Right. Sir, Professor Pandey, let me come back to you. You talked about in your initial comments about pranamaya kosha, and there is something called Karan Sharir, if I'm pronouncing
Karan
it
Shari.
correct, Karan Sharir. So, how are these typically Indian concepts, helpful, and what is it about? Just explain it a little bit further.
Yeah. I think these are the very unique concepts of the Indian psychology. Sharir is not only of the physical nature, Sharir is the Susthu Sharir, which is Annamaya Kosh, Sukshma Sharir, which is constituted of the pravrittis, gunas, and the mind is means the man and Vijnanamaya Kosh, that is part of the Sukshma Sharir, and the Karan Sharir. Karan Sharir is experienced in the Anandamaya Kosh, but it is called Karan Sharir because this is the Karan, the cause of that constant integrated awareness being enveloped in the form of individual. That is why it is called Vyakti. Individual and Vyakti are two different, they have a different meaning. Individual is that which is last unit, indivisible, whereas Vyakti is expressed. Now, we use both the words for the human being, individual or Vyakti, but we are talking very different things. Individual is that is the unit of the society or family, and which is not divisible further, whereas Vyakti is expression. Expression of what? Expression of the so called what we call in English divine. Divine is not exactly what is called Purusha or Brahman. ये इनका अलग नेचर है. सांख्य में जिसको पुरुष कहते हैं, वेदांत में अद्वैत कहते हैं. तो हम उस बारीकी में नहीं जाएंगे, लेकिन ultimately the human being is understood as the expression of that which is eternal. Karan Sharir, how that eternal engulfed or enveloped in the individual or in Vyakti is because of certain core vasanas. The most fundamental vasana is eko ham aneko bhavishyam, अनेक हो जाऊं. और from there Sankhya uses Sankhya explains this metaphysics most eloquently. It says that Purush and Prakriti in the form of they come closer in the presence of Mahat. Mahat is the core intelligence. That's a so the fundamental expression of the life in the human being starts with the fundamental expression of life starts with that core intelligence through which atoms are formed and everything is the core. The core is intelligence, that is called Mahat. After Mahat, what emerges is Aham, Asmita. The ahankar. The being individual is the core karan, and then over that other vasanas also gets inflicted, which arise from sattva, raja and tamasic gunas. So, that is the karan or the cause for that integral consciousness to take the form of human being. Our objective is twofold in the Indian psychology: vyavharik objective and paramarthik objective. Vyavharik objective is to experience that ananda. Anand or Karan Sharir we experience every day in the deep sleep, because all the uh, fluctuations of the mind, of the different realms of the existence, Annamaya Kosh, Pranamaya Kosh, Manomaya Kosh, the fluctuation and particularities, they subside in the deep sleep. So, we experience Anand. Vyavharik paksha, Vyavharik objective of Indian psychology is to experience that Anand in the wakeful state. Can I be blissed out 24/7, 365 days in thick of action? So, that is the implication of the Karan Sharir, Anandamaya Kosh, that is how it is connected. Is it, does it sounds weird? If we look at little deeper, it will look very practical, because one of the characteristics of the yogis is that their particularities are gone, their fluctuations are less, not only at the mind level, in fact their relaxation is at the muscular level as well. We have experiments conducted on some great yogis. Sri Ram, the Yogi Sri Ram is his experiment is very well known, where he was explaining, he was speaking, and the muscle tension was assessed, and it was similar to that of a dead body. So, practically he should not be alive, but here is the person who is not only alive, he is active. Then there are a lot of mind current research studies which are saying, which are capturing the mind waves. Now, the mind waves, there are certain alpha, beta, gamma, different types of mind waves are there. The gamma waves are connected to the most restful state of mind. Somebody who is solving the mathematical problem, somebody who is negotiating, it should be emanating those waves which are related to the higher activity. But in lot of meditators, particularly long term meditators, it is found that their mind waves are similar to that of a ordinary person who will emit those waves in the deep sleep state. So, these are the indicators that Anandamaya Kosh can be experienced. We can be in that state in the normal day to day action. That is still the Vyavharik Paksha of yoga. That is not the ultimate objective. The ultimate objective is to get samadhi. It is even to transcend the Anandamaya Kosh. That is Vidya, that is Atma Sakshatkar, the real nature of you being, and real nature is not encapsulated, but that is the paramarthik objective of the Indian psychology. So, this is little kind of explanation of the Karan Sharir and how it fits into the Indian psychology, what is its place in the Indian psychology. Another beautiful term of the Indian psychology is prana. Pran is the expression of another speciality of the Indian psychology, where it deals, where it is not suffering from the problem of excluded middle. What is the excluded middle problem? The excluded middle problem is, this is mind, this is body, this is mundane, this is sacred, this is profane, this is sacred, this is physical or objective, that is subjective, and we do not seems to have any answer. How come the objective material and the materialistic philosophy, which is on which most of the science is based, it says that it attains material attains the consciousness when it reaches to certain level of complexity. That is a basis of the materialism. The reason for this jump is that still most of the scientific streams do not have this notion or this understanding or at least the recognition of the possibility of something which is in middle. Indian psychology do not has dealt with this issue, and they have presented they have addressed the problem of excluded middle, which is what is the middle in context of the pranamaya kosh. The middle is the physical body, which is objective, and the manomaya kosh or the subjective, which is manomaya kosh, vijnanamaya kosh, which are more subjective. Anandamaya kosh, they are subjective. This is annamaya kosh, which is objective. What connects these two things? That is called pranamaya kosh. So, that is a very important notion, and it is not only notion. The Indian psychology, the great thing about either we look at Indian psychology or Indian Bharatiya darshan, it is not only conceptual, it has certain practices, it presents a elaborated framework as well. So, prana, there are 5 types of prana which are related to different expressions of the human activity. They are further divided into 17 types of prana. I am not giving that lecture on that, but pranamaya kosh works. We may not directly observe the pranamaya kosh, but it works. We can see by impact of breathing, because breathe or the pranavayu is considered to be the source of pranamaya kosh. If we change the breathing pattern, our emotions change, our cognitive abilities also change, and for that there are ample studies. Even our own research group in IIT Bombay, we have looked at the impact of the pranayam or breathing exercises on various things like quality of decision making, moral reasoning, psychological capital, flourishing. Most of these things we have found being affected by just doing the breathing exercise, and that is not only physical, that is pranic in nature, which influences the subjectivity, the subjective aspect of the human being. So, that is how the Karan Sharir and the Pranamaya Kosh are some of the most unique aspect of the Indian psychology, on which they not only help in explaining certain things better about the human life, human experience, its behavior in the world, they also give workable techniques to experience more joy and experience more alignment and coherence in our life.
Sir, while you were telling about Pranamaya Kosh and Karan Sharif, one word that caught my attention was Vasana. Now, Vasana in the common understanding is something very negative, something we should all get rid of. We should be, like at a hand's length from that. This is something we are supposed to be fighting. The youth are fighting, so they seem to be fighting Vasana, and there are so many techniques. So, can you just elaborate a little bit further and place it in that context, as in when we say that a certain thing is a Vasana, let's say the lust for money or lust for sexual satisfaction or whatever, how does the Vasana that the Vasana which you are explaining and this Vasana, what is the difference, and what can be done to control this, the negative thing which we are trying to do?
Vasanas are the core reason for existence. That eternal constant or that eternal consciousness, which Vedantis call Brahma or Sankhyites call Purusha, can never engulfed or enveloped in the form of the one Vyakti without Vasana. At least the core Vasana has to be there, that I have to exist. So, from there it starts. That is why Ahankar emerges along with the Ahankar happens because of the Vasana, and there is a sankalp, prakriti ka sankalp hai to exist in certain form. From the Vasanas, from the Ahankar comes Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic, then more Vasanas come. So, Sattvic Vasanas are there, Rajasic Vasanas are there, and Tamasic Vasanas are there. Sattvic Vasana is to get enlightenment, Moksha is the mumukshatva is also a vasana. But that is a sattvic vasana. Self control, sham, dam, uparati, titiksha, shraddha, these are all in certain level are the intent. सत्व का इंटेंट है, ये सत्व का संकल्प है, because without that we cannot experience life in a most prolific way, in most joyful way. That which looks joyful is very temporary. You have more than you have the pizza and little more than what you can digest, you see what pizza can cause for you. But you have more meditation, it will not cause anything. You have more devotion, it will not hurt you, it will make you better. There are certain values which more are there, they will make you better. That is what Maslow called being values. So, there are sattvic vasanas, then there are rajasic vasanas as well, to have power, to have influence, to make money, to get fame. All these are expressions of the rajasic vasanas, and then the tamasic vasanas are to just chill out, lie down, just to kind of
Take a long vacation.
yes, just lying down, lazing.
Lazy.
That's a. So, the vasana as such is the reason for existence, core vasana, but role of sadhana is to refine the vasanas so that so that we have more sattvic vasanas, because sattvic vasanas will help us to balance the inertia and the dynamism in life. And after that, the ultimate objective, that is the paramarthik objective, vyavaharik objective is to refine the vasanas to the sattvic level, enjoy the life and your individuality, do best in the world. The paramarthik objective is even to transcend the sattva, to immerse again in that constant integrated awareness through which you are being carved out. There is a famous statement of S. Radhakrishnan, Doctor, the great philosopher, Indian philosopher. He says, man is nothing but the divinity carved out in the human form. So, to experience that, we need to transcend even that vasana, which is the core vasana, to exist as a separate entity. But what we need to what we need to understand, and what not only youth, everybody need to understand, is that no sattvic and rajasic vasana can last longer without having detrimental impact on itself. So, the first step is awareness, and then constantly, regularly developing the ability of the self control. We can enjoy food only we take it in the controlled amount. We can enjoy sex, we can enjoy money only when we pursue these in the mindful way. We all need to consciously understand and define our boundaries, because they are not there for themselves. Money is not objective in itself. Fame or sex is not for it is ultimately for that human being, at least for the Ahankar, if not for the Brahman. So, when it is not for the its own sake, there are many other things which have to be taken care of. That mindfulness has to be there. In pursuance of that, then we will naturally identify the boundary, how to manage the boundary, how to manage the vasanas. What is the framework of Indian psychology? It gives 4 objectives of life. Artha, meaning as well as possessions. Kama, which is sensuous pleasure. Guided by Dharma, which is righteousness. What is the righteousness in the dharmic perspective? Intrinsically it is joyful, extrinsically it is harmonious, because this in and out is just the illusion. Ultimately it is the one world. So, that which is good for self, good for the harmony in the world, that is the dharma. Nishreyas and Abhyudaya, these are the 2 constructs being used in the Vaisheshik. Material, good for the material wealth as well as for the spiritual wealth. So, that is dharma, and ultimate objective is moksha. Moksha is not only about having samadhi and leaving the world. Moksha, it is in the Purushartha sense, moksha we have to experience every day. Sometimes we experience it consciously. जब ग्रहण का काल पूरा होता है तो उसको भी हम मोक्ष कहते हैं, मोक्ष हो गया. हम विसर्जन या मोक्ष is very much required every day, then only we can experience little bit of Anandamaya Kosh and then come back again to the day to day life. So, just to summarize, Vasana is the basic intent to exist as a separate individual. Vasanas can be sattvic, rajasic and tamasic. Sattvic vasanas are there to manage ourselves, to experience joy in the life. How to control the vasanas? The fourfold objective, dharma, artha, kamana and moksha, which are called purushartha. Purush ka artha, why Purush exists in this world, that is the objective, and that this is the way we look at. So, that is why the Indian psychology is, do not deny the sensuous pleasure or the possessions. This culture has been very ambitious culture in that way, ambitious for having trade, world over this culture had the trade, ambitious for knowledge, ambitious for creativity. We have all the evidences with all, but all these ambitions and the desires are important when they are informed by dharma and aspire to get moksha. So, mathematics is also for moksha, music is also for moksha, sthapatya, ultimate objective, is also moksha. All four have to be in line, have to be kind of in our vicinity, in our view, to pursue the engagements in life. What is the scientific basis for this? What's current literature or science is also talking about it. There is a humanistic, there are many kind of examples. I will just take one example, because I come from the field of management primarily. Economics, a lot of economic model which are the foundation for the management theories as well, are based on the utility maximization approach or the tendency of the human being. They assume that human beings are the utility of, they maximize the utility of whatever transaction they engage in. Cut the story short, the humanistic management question this assumption. We have a great scholar, Professor Sumanta Ghoshal, who wrote a very famous article, Bad Management Theories Are Destroying Good Management Practices. He also pointed out this utility maximizer basic assumption about the certain economic model, which in turn became the management foundation for the management model. The humanistic management says that we do not maximize utility, we actually optimize drive. What are the drives? Drives are to possess, to secure, to belong and to find meaning in the larger scheme of things. And we do not maximize the utility, we optimize across the four drives. When we look at these four drives, don't they indicate the dharma, artha and kam?
Yeah.
They are not talking about moksha, but they are certainly related to these, they are the reflections of the dharma, artha, kam, and that is the objective of business. So, and the objective is not to create surplus, but to create well-being. So, that is the role of Vasana and the position in the Indian psychology, and juxtaposing it with the Western literature or contemporary literature.